For this analysis, we use public data from Lending Club. You can also use your own data to apply your own analytics. You need to map your financial instruments, and then you need to define your assumptions for default probability and prepayments, and then you can see the results based on certain scenarios that you can define. This data, they should be in a format on Excel spreadsheet. The system will load up this information, and then we will apply all the analytics and provide the results on out of the box, basically. The available tool is built in MATLAB, and it has a graphical user interface. We use almost 500,000 of financial instruments, but there is no limit. Basically, you can use a portfolio of a couple of million contracts or a few hundreds or few thousands of contracts. What is important is to define the distribution of the contracts into the sub-portfolios based on different ratings or based on your assumption of the distribution. Ideally, we expect that there will not be any prepayment as well as no default. The reality is that some counterparties, they do prepay, and some of the counterparties, they will default, which means that we need to consider this real-world probability in our analytics and calculate what is the expected income and what are the expected cash flows under, again, normal conditions, under canonical conditions, which will contain the probability of prepayments as well as some default events. In our software, you are able to calculate the performance of your portfolios under these canonical conditions about the expected cash flows, expected volume, and expected prepayment and default probabilities. It allows you to stress these risk factors, and based on some deterministic scenarios that you can define, and you see what is the impact on your profit, loss, cash flows, and so on. For this analysis, the mapping of the financial instruments, we need 5 different types of information. The value date, the day that the deal starts, basically. The duration of the contract, the interest payment, the rating of the counterparty, and the amount of the principal amount. This is about the mapping of the instrument. Now, there are certain parameters that we can define it, and this is actually on the modeling process. When we do when we structure the replicated portfolios, we basically take a sample of existing contracts to a sub portfolios. Now, the way that we sample this portfolio is by considering the distribution of the ratings of the counterparties. In our case study, we follow the strategy of constructing the portfolios based on Lending Club. We've seen that the majority of the financial instruments are high rated, and there are few also with the low rated. Of course, remember that when we have low rated or medium rated contracts, the interest rate is higher. which means the interest income, the expected interest income is much higher. But everyone can map or can replicate the portfolio, can basically distribute the contracts in these sub-portfolios according to how the existing entire portfolio is structured. That's basically the main idea. Now, why we have built so many sub-portfolios is because we want to simulate for each of the sub-portfolio the profit and income, as well as all the expected cash flows, and then having the entire distribution of this performance. So we know the bandwidth of the minimum to the highest possible performance under our assumptions in regards to the default probabilities and prepayments. Under expected conditions, we can calculate what is the performance of our portfolios. Now, what if something wrong or something unexpected will happen? So what if our counterparties, they go and prepay? What if we have more default events than we've been expected? We need to know up to which point our portfolio still performs in a positive way. What is the point where we're going to have a negative performance, which means we will have some losses? And what is the maximum losses that we will have over the time of the lifetime of our instruments? We have defaults events anyhow, but it makes big difference in our income if the default happened to after a certain time. And we need to know this time. We need to know which is the time where we will have big losses or will have losses in case of the events, of the default events, or even of the prepayment. In our system, basically, we can apply any type of scenarios, deterministic scenarios, and then we see these point in times and we see what it means in terms of our performance, what it means in terms of the value, in terms of the profitability, in terms of losses, and also in terms of all the cash flows, what we call liquidity view. When you apply a stress scenario, you have to basically define your possible cases, your possible events that may happen in the future. This is something that in the deterministic scenarios you have to define. In practice, we do not define more than 3 scenarios. We call it stress normal, stress medium, and stress extreme. And basically we see not only the results out of it, but the delta between the scenarios. In the results, we can visually see the performance of our portfolios. when we apply even more extreme scenarios, then we have seen that the amount of profit is very, very small compared to the amount of losses. You have to find the scenario which gives you your limits of going from profit to a loss. The full version contains additional functionality in regards to the input data. You could be available to plug to different source systems and also to different data format. Also, the risk analysis is not only limited to stress scenarios, but also to value at risk analysis. In this credit bar analysis, we basically simulate the different probabilities of the counterparty to downgrade or default, considering the correlation between the counterparty as well as the market conditions. We also have additional reports, meaning additional views in regards to liquidity, in regards to what could be the possible output if you sell your portfolio, in terms of the value, again in terms of the expected cash flows. And we can also see the concentration risk, meaning what are the counterparties where there is a higher or lower concentration. Also the contribution of each of the counterparty or each of the deals into the performance of the entire portfolio. You can compare different portfolios coming from the same or different platforms. So you compare in regards to the income, to the expected income, and also to risk. So the profitability and risk for each portfolio is provided, and the delta among different portfolios is also calculated.